Welcome to Politics and Tactics. We got a great show for you tonight. The world seems a little safer, but for firefighters out there, remember, it's really time to double the guard. You know, PJ, as somebody who served in the National Guard, and I think a lot of the Seattle guys that we're going to be talking about tonight, their group of guys have a lot of military veterans in it. The fact is, we don't know if we're going to get hit.
I would agree, Frank. You can't let, regardless of how you feel of what has happened over the last couple of days, this is definitely the time to raise our awareness, have some good situational awareness, and be prepared. Be prepared for the unknown because we don't know what's next.
And we thank all our servicemen, the president, and of course our first responders. And tonight we're gonna do two things in this show. Later on in the show, we're going to be talking about rapid intervention with Walt Lewis and a individual on one of the rescues in St. Louis. But first, we're going to start. We've had him on several times, but it's been a while, and we kind of need an update of what's going on with the vaccine mandates. Yes, the pandemic's over, but so are individuals' careers. Some individuals had to move to new careers. We still have firefighters, cops, teachers who haven't been brought back to work. And it's important for our listeners to realize that this really isn't a red and blue issue. We've had Democrats do some great things, keep their personnel, make adjustments. We've had Republicans do the same. Every city that I'm aware of, regardless of blue or red, the pandemic's over and they're hiring firefighters who aren't vaccinated or vaccinated. So why haven't we just stopped the ridiculousness and brought back the firefighters forced out, forced to retire, and the firefighters that were fired? And now we're hearing some real disturbing news out of Seattle on this fake vax card issue. But let's first start off by introducing both of our guests. Andy Pittman, you've been a co-host of this show. You've been on this show before. Tell us, listeners, just refresh them a little bit about your background, and then we'll go to Davey.
Andy Pittman, passionate father, passionate firefighter, worked for Seattle Fire Department for 6 years, was terminated over a failure to accommodate during the vaccine mandate 2021. Took a little while to get on, but got hired on another fire department down the road. And all the while, I've continued to volunteer at my local firehouse.
The COVID didn't follow you to the other firehouse. It stops at the Seattle line, apparently.
No. Yeah.
Public policy. You got to love it. Davey, tell us a little about yourself.
22 years almost with the City of Seattle Fire Department. I'm passionate, like Andy. I'm a Christian. I'm a husband. I'm a father. I was a firefighter for the City of Seattle until I was terminated in November of 21 because for the same reason that Andy was, failure to accommodate my religious exemption. And now we have uprooted and we've moved our family to the state of Idaho. We are in a suburb of Boise, and I'm returning to my roots of being a small contractor. I do remodels. 45 minutes ago, I was hanging tile in a bathroom.
Now, Seattle hasn't been fine since everybody got fired and forced out. Is it true that they are still browning out companies and overtime spiking through the roof?
Yes. I had a conversation with somebody just the other day that Seattle Fire Department is world renowned for its Medic One paramedic ALS program. And they're running oftentimes at 50% staffing of so half of the medic units aren't even being staffed.
Oh my God. Now, Andy, are they browning out or playing Firehouse Russian roulette with truck and engine companies as well?
Yeah. So one of the things that started to happen when their staffing was getting really low is they would take a double house, an engine and a truck, and they would brown out one of the units, send the existing members that were left, let's say on a ladder truck, over to fill out another engine company and keep that second unit, the engine company, going at that same firehouse. So the community didn't notice that the doors were being closed on it. One of the two units was still in service, and they were able to send other staff members to other stations to try to augment the staffing.
I think it's important to highlight Andy's 100% right, but one of the things that would happen when that scenario would unfold is the fire chief, Mr. Scoggins, would deliberately mislead the public when they were asking about those very issues and tell them, oh, that station is still active, but it's not properly or fully staffed.
Oh my God. That's unbelievable. And one thing that I think will surprise a lot of their listeners is, I worked in New Haven. We had minimum staffing, so there was no such thing as browning out a company or playing Firehouse Russian roulette. They would just, if they were short, they would order people to stay for mandatory overtime. But the firehouses and the companies were always staffed. The union fought for years to make sure that there was staffing. Both of you are in the same lawsuit. Is that correct, with Steve Collins?
Correct.
What's the status? I'll go to Andy and then I'll go to Davey. What's the status of the lawsuit now?
So the status is still in discovery. That's being delayed by the defendants, the city of Seattle, and their outside counsel. Essentially, we have gone above and beyond, and we work to stay beyond reproach in our all of our documentation. So we've submitted our discovery. Over 10,000 documents have been submitted, and we're at a very disadvantaged position because we are not the generator of documents. The city of Seattle is. So we've got to ask them to give us the documents so that way we can submit it. And we've been very timely in all of our requests, but they're still delaying.
And the thing is that the reason why this makes absolutely no sense from a public policy standpoint is I'm pretty confident that you're going to get your jobs back. And then that's just going to be more damages onto the taxpayers. We know that the reason that you were forced out or fired was built initially off a faulty premise that if you got the shot, you couldn't transmit the virus or get the virus. We know from some of the documents that I've seen from Seattle, it appears allegedly that Seattle knew that and still continued to force firefighters out and firefighters.
That's accurate.
So it doesn't make any sense at this point in time, with the pandemic over, with the mandates over, why not just settle and bring you back to work? And I've been getting a lot of texts after my recent last op-ed, and a lot of firefighters in America think that this is just a Seattle issue. This is still happening in New York City. There's forced out and fired firefighters, and there's smaller communities, especially, correct me if I'm wrong, but in the Washington, Oregon area, it seems more prominent. And PJ, you might be able to weigh in on this. Massachusetts, while Connecticut didn't, Massachusetts fired or forced out state troopers. Do you know if they were brought back to work?
I don't know. I only know Connecticut's policy, which I feel the governor did a really good job. They required vaccination, but there was also exemptions, and they allowed testing. So if you did not want to be vaccinated, you just had to supply weekly testing, which I thought was a really good compromise. So they didn't terminate any state employees.
And then eventually when the science became clearer, they got rid of the testing component of it.
Correct.
As well,
Once the pandemic was over, they got rid of all requirements.
Yeah, and that seems like a reasonable stance. And Connecticut is bluer than blue, and the governor did do a good job on that. You got to give credit where credit is due. And another example of a blue city doing an unbelievable job is the city of Houston, Texas, the fourth largest city, and the fire chief and the mayor worked together, and they put in a testing regimen, and they didn't fire any firefighters. Andy, you're working for another fire department now, correct?
Yes.
And what was that like, that transition?
Well, it's been quite a bit to navigate in the union side of it, because I'm calling out a union that failed to represent me, which was the Seattle Fire Local 27, while also concurrently being a member of Local 3152. So it's, I've got to play nice there, but the biggest difference is that my current local is willing to have dissenting opinions and honest, hard conversations, much like Davey and I used to at Fire Station 31. We're both Mad Hatters from Seattle. We were both at the same firehouse with Mike Galliano. And that's what makes the fire service great, is that we don't have to let our politics divide us. We can sit down at the same table and have opposing views and come together for a common cause. So I've felt a lot of support. In fact, I felt more support there than I had when I was in Seattle.
That's unbelievable. So you were both Mad Hatters with Galliano?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, I hope Mike sees this right now. I would just advise you that you probably would not want to omit that in public any further past this point.
No, Mike's a great guy, and it's an honor to.
I'd kick down the gates of hell with a water pistol for Mike Galliano.
Mike Galliano has done so much for me as a mentor in the National Fire Service. And, and I'm sitting here when the two of you introduced yourself. What really stuck out is most people we have in the show say, I'm a firefighter. It's the first thing out of the word, or I'm a captain, or I'm a chief. You guys both commented of your family first, me being a father, which I thought was really impressive. And that goes to exactly what every Seattle firefighter that I met, one of the most professional groups and nicest down-to-earth people that I have met in the fire service. And I've met a lot of your brothers and sisters from your department in my travels with FSRI and FDIC. So it's a pleasure to really build some additional friendships. And you guys have an extremely professional, proactive department. And I hate to see what the two of you have gone through.
The one thing that I don't understand, and I still can't get my head around it, is why the union didn't fight for you guys and girls. It made absolutely no sense. The union's there, even if they disagreed with you 100%. That's why you pay dues, so that they would represent your rights and your due process rights. The union sometimes they should have backed you anyway. But even if they, play devil's advocate, even if they were on the other side of the issue, they have to invoke their inner John Adams to say that this has to be a principled stance. The union, when you pay dues, is like a defense attorney, and it's clear that you guys had essentially no due process. Illegal aliens get more due process in America, in the courts are jumping in and trying to their version of fix it immediately right now. But yet firefighters have been just left. And I saw your union in Seattle post about doing a rally for illegal immigrants, but yet I didn't see that same rally, that same passion for Seattle firefighters. No matter where you fall on that other issue, the fact is it's the union's job to represent people. I've said it before. I represented people that drove drunk and people that beat their wives. I don't advocate for either one of those positions, but you have to protect their due process rights. Here you guys were doing what you believed was right. It turned out you were right. And the unions sat on their hands, and some of them didn't even make speeches. Some made speeches, but a lot of them didn't even do that. So that's kind of disappointing to me. Davey.
Yes, sir.
It must have been a big jump to move your family all the way to Idaho.
It's 2 states away. It's not too bad, but it's a beautiful environment. We're happy to be here. We're thankful. This is a place that the social climate, the people that live in this area, it suits us and matches our value system very well. So we're thankful. It's been a bumpy ride, but we don't get a testimony without a test.
Okay. Interesting. So. Now, Andy, you have 4 kids, correct?
Yes.
How are the kids doing? Did both of you have to have your kids change schools in this whole process?
Yeah, my wife has now become full-time homeschool administrator. I think that was really a testament to her calculated moves. It was one day I was driving to work and I went, wait, if she's homeschooling, she's never getting a job again, because by the time she's done homeschooling, our oldest will be having kids. So that was really smooth tactics on her part. But we have severely altered our lives as a result of being terminated. Right before I was terminated, my mother-in-law and father-in-law moved onto our property. So if I'm homeless, it's a pretty drastic change for everybody around us. And they had to put a lot of faith into me to make this transition out of Seattle. At first, when they announced the mandate, there was language in the mandate that said they would give us accommodations. So about a week in, I had some faith and hope that this thing would pan out okay. And the further down the road we got, the more clear it was going to be a sham process for us.
Imagine you and your kids and your wife. If you don't mind me asking, did your wife have a career before she ended up getting forced into homeschooling?
No. And it is, being as we're in Washington State, the superintendent of public instruction out here is probably about as big a problem as Chief Scoggins is. And so we kept our kids out of public school a little bit longer because of the mask mandate that followed the vaccine mandate. And once they lifted that, we allowed our 2 oldest and our 2 youngest to go back to school. Our 2 youngest were in Catholic school, so it was a little more accommodating to our belief structure. And then we didn't pull our kids into homeschool afterwards. So she's been out of the workforce per se for a while, but she's a business owner, which is North Star Earthworks. She's actually really good at rigging trees with me. So she goes out and runs excavator and helps me climb and cut trees more often than not.
That's phenomenal. Davey.
Yes, sir.
We've been hearing a lot of stuff out of Seattle now over fake vaccine cards.
Yes.
Can you kind of fill us into what's going on with that? And it's kind of mind-blowing that they would force people out, fire people, then they knew they had all these fake vaccine cards, but they
kind of ironic, isn't it?
Just ignored those individuals. Can you shed some light on what's going on with that?
Sure. So this was something that we all knew was going on when it was all going down. The time leading up to and shortly after the D-Day for us was October 18th of 2021. And so there were rumors of people having real, genuine vaccination cards because the City of Seattle Fire Department ran the vaccination sites. So they had access to authentic CDC vaccination cards with batch numbers, with lot numbers. And there were people that would 5-finger them. And we have people willing to attest that there were stacks on the watch desks of 2 of the busiest fire stations in the city on the morning of October 18th. So if you wanted to, you could grab one of those real cards, fill your name on, and send it in. And you would, for the purpose of paperwork, you were now vaccinated. That was appearances. Now, we knew this was going on, but we had a hard time convincing other people of it. Well, there was a particular deputy chief that the city officials were kind of upset with. And so they asked for his fire department phone, which had the Signal app on it, and they unlocked his phone and gained access to some text streams. Now, I can share this with you because we're not going to be violating any legal tactics or anything like that because it's all public information. And what happened was the city decided to commission an investigation into this whole situation. One of our members, during their Loudermill hearing, their exit interview, mentioned to the chief, "Hey, chief, there's lots of people with fake vax cards." And the chief's response was, "That's not my problem. That's not my concern." Oh, okay. Yet this is a disease that is supposedly so dangerous, so deadly that everybody has to get this shot or we're all going to die. And if you don't, we're going to fire you. Yet there are people that when it was alleged, claimed, stated, whatever you want to say, "Hey, I know people that have fake vax cards. I know that people are having this." And the chief doesn't do an investigation. So they commissioned this investigation a few months ago. And the report comes back saying more probably than not, and this is, I think the biggest place it was posted is with the highest circulation was the Post Millennial, which isn't that big of a circulation, but it's not the New York Times or anything like that. But it came quite out there that not only in this investigation did they discover more probably than not, there's a lot of people with fake vax cards. The number is unknown, but even if it's one, the fact they didn't try to do it, didn't try to look into it was a problem. And then one of the other things that came out of that investigation was there was another, at the time, deputy chief, who's now an assistant chief, who, for the sake of a paper trail, wrote himself an email after a non-recorded conference with the mayor and senior staff, where it was announced that they would not be accommodating people. He asked, "Can we get this in writing?" And the response by the mayor's assistant was, "Legal has recommended that we not put that in writing." So he goes back and writes himself an email saying, "Hey, for the sake of a paper trail," and that's actually the the title line, the subject line of his email is for the sake of a paper trail to himself. And I think he included a couple other people documenting what just went on in the meeting that he was in.
So this really shows how arbitrary and capricious it was to get rid of and force out all of you when they're ignoring this other issue. And take this issue aside, because this is a leadership lesson for everybody in the fire service. There's no such thing as, oh, I didn't receive an official complaint, so therefore I'm not going to investigate it. Or if you know about something as an officer, somebody brings something to you and says, hey, we went to the academy together. I don't want you to say anything about this. There are certain things that you have to report and investigate. Just because there's not a letter or there's anonymous letter. I've heard so many chiefs say, we don't investigate anonymous letters. I go, that won't hold up in court. If you know about it, you have to do at least a preliminary, you don't got to do a full out huge investigation. But if you receive an anonymous letter, you have to do a little bit of due diligence before you can just reject that letter. So just having somebody tell somebody in a position of authority that this is going on, they have to do some kind of investigation. There's another lesson that's in here for politics and tactics. And I always ask in one of my classes, what's the E stand for in email? And people will go like electronic. And it's like, no, it's evidence. So anything you put in an email is evidence, and anything you load on a city phone, pictures, text messages, is all public information. And eventually somebody's going to get a hold of it. To tell a little funny story here, we had a acid that was crystallizing in an earth lab for the state of Connecticut in New Haven. And so we had the bomb squad there, and we went up to it to take pictures of it to kind of come up with our site safety plan on how we were going to have the bomb squad remove the acid out of the earth lab building and put it into the containment and neutralize it. And one of the assistant drill masters took out their personal phone and started shooting pictures of the acid. And the state cop goes, your phone is now evidence. And the assistant drill master goes, oh, the only thing you're going to find on my phone is porn, and walked away. And I'm going, oh my God. So just firemen being firemen. But anything you do with a phone is public information. Because you guys had the courage to really stand by your convictions and principle. Andy, how did this kind of really make you feel that this is going on, that basically they ignored people who cheated the system when you guys stood up for what you believed was right? And I believe you were 100% right on this one. Well,
it's pretty frustrating, and it really kind of takes the wind out of my sails sometimes to know that, I lost my career over something that somebody else was able to lie and keep theirs, and which is just another chapter of human behavior. But to have the leadership be put on notice that this was happening, and then turn a cheek to it, and have the union stand by and allow this all to happen, is I think next level. I know for me, as well as Davey, because we're friends outside of this, is that I get to hang my head on my pillow at night and put my head down, knowing that I've kept my honor and integrity intact, and that, last week with my son graduating, we had plans that looked way different than what actually unfolded due to my termination. But at no point did he have to wonder whether his dad was a liar. The chief of Seattle Fire Department, I don't think gets to do that anymore, because he knew that I was terminated and that Davey was terminated on false pretenses.
And what's real, Davey, how many years has it been since you guys been out of a job?
3.5. Andy and I were fired early on in the process. I think he was a week or so ahead of me. I think you were early November. I was November 22nd. So the date that everybody who did not submit vaccination paperwork, we were placed on unpaid admin leave on October 19th was D-Day. And so we began, while they processed us out, it took, for me, it took a little over a month, and I was burning my accrued leave balances. So I still received a paycheck and had health insurance, but that was it.
So P.J., you brought up a point about how family orientated these guys are in Seattle. I can just imagine. Now, I think that you're going to prevail in court. if you don't prevail at the lower court, I think you're going to prevail at the Court of Appeals. But now, if you get hired back and now you have to have that uncomfortable conversation with your wife and kids, a lot of these, I know some Seattle firefighters, I believe they went as far as Tennessee. Like they dispersed. They're not, Andy's kind of close, but just for a kid, moving a school system is a big deal. So now if you're vindicated, I hate to use the word trauma, but you're going to have to go back to your family and say, we've been vindicated. We won. If you choose to go back to work, now you're going to have to uproot the kids out of school again, your family, your business, everything, and move again. PJ?
Yeah, I think that's a bad spot. It's a bad spot for your families. And you guys both appear to be putting your families first in all of your decisions. That's a difficult spot because you're not making the decision just for you. You're not a single man firefighter who can just pick up their backpack and go back to work. So I do too hope you prevail, but it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out.
My wife and I have talked about what that might look like in some decent detail. We have a plan for if and when that were to arise.
We're at the witching hour here. I wanted to bring you back to kind of put a personal face on this. Last time we talked a lot about the law, but I kind of wanted to hear some of your stories, and I was actually kind of glad we did that. But I want to go around the room here and give you both the last word. I know that, and I think it's important for our viewers to realize this, firefighters around the country. These are just two small stories of over 70 Seattle firefighters forced out or fired. And top that off with New York City firefighters. I still talk to Battalion Chief Tom LaPola on a regular basis. Here's a guy with unbelievable experience on the job that could be benefiting everybody, and he was forced out of the job. So this isn't just the Seattle issue. It's an American fire service issue. Andy, whatever you want to say, go ahead, and then we'll go to Davey and we'll end it.
Well, Chief David Rhodes, the stuff that he's kind of put out, and a lot of the other stuff going around on the internet about fire service problems and leadership problems. One thing that I've learned through this is that in under no circumstances do stop being your own advocate. You guys are going to talk about RIT coming up. The RIT can be the most boring thing on the fire ground if that's the attitude you take. But if you lean into it and you're proactive, you're going to get results in RIT. And that's what we've had to do with us in this case, is we've had to learn more than we ever thought we would know about the legal framework that we're operating in. And that's deepened our faith and our family connections and has given me the resolve I have today that absolutely, unequivocally, we are going to win.
Very well said and great lead-in. Davey?
Similar to Andy, my faith walk is strong. My relationship with my wife is excellent. My relationship with my two young adult sons is fantastic. I made my decision, and in my letter that I sent out to people kind of on an informal basis, I have to be an example to my sons of what it looks like to be a person of character and integrity in the face of adversity. How do you handle that? So you mentioned earlier, Frank, that you had some pretty big disappointments in how the union handled it. To my knowledge, and I don't know all of them because I don't follow everybody, every union that fought a mandate, I believe, prevailed. And they did not, and guild or union, if the union fought it, I believe they were able to prevail and protect their employees from being terminated. Ours didn't. In my opinion, they rolled over. And Frank Lima and Ed Kelly came to our regular business meeting the day after my exit interview, dislocated their shoulders, patting themselves on the back about how great they are, told us that they didn't see a way through it, and yet his own Boston Fire Department was able to not lose anybody over mandates. So our union...
Kelly wants to fight me, not for the Seattle firefighters. So that was clear at FDIC. I'm going to ask Mark, because Davey, you commented in that op-ed to post that op-ed.
Yes.
With the show. We're going to move on to RIT, but we just wanted to let you know that you're not forgotten, that we think about the Seattle firefighters, and we're trying to do all we can to, at least, it's so small and it means very little, but we're trying our best to just keep this in the public eye so that you're really not forgotten.
Thanks for your help. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. You guys have a great night. All the best to your family. Mark, if you could bring on our other two guests. P.J.?
Yeah. All right, guys. Hey guys, welcome. So we're going to kind of pivot here a little bit. We're going to start talking about rapid intervention teams and RIT. And we have two great guests. One guest that I'm very familiar with, as is just about anybody and everybody who attends FDIC. And that's Walt Lewis, who's the Deputy Chief of the Orlando International Airport Fire Rescue. He's recently retired Assistant Chief. So Walt, congratulations on that retirement. Walt is a longtime FDIC instructor. He's worked on some of the busiest units, also in the training division, Florida USAR Task Force 4. He's been a mentor of many. I think he's a great individual to be talking about this topic tonight.
He's also a great guy to have a beer with at FDIC. He's always just out there. I love seeing Walt at FDIC. So if you see him, go up because he's just a great guy to talk to.
And
that might be because I think I bought the last round when Frank and I were hanging out.
You definitely bought the last round. And then we have Jeff. And Jeff, I'm going to have you pronounce your last name because I don't want to butcher that on you. Even if you told me, I'd probably not get it right. But Jeff joins us after about nearly 25 years of service in the fire department. The last 16 years, he served in St. Louis Fire Department, currently assigned to Rescue 2. He also works in the St. Louis Fire Academy. He's also on FEMA's USAR Mission Task Force 1. So between Jeff and Walt, we welcome you to the show, and we're really interested to hear your take on rapid intervention and also your careers.
And PJ, we'll start off with Jeff. And I've never met Jeff, even though he's been teaching at FDIC, but I had the honor to evaluate his proposal. And a lot of the proposals for FDIC for RIT were a little uninspiring. And Jeff's proposal snapped out. So I made some phone calls and found out that he's the real deal in St. Louis on the rescue. Figured we'd have him on the show. And here's a guy, we talked a lot about family with Andy Pittman and Davey. Here's a guy who rearranged his whole schedule, got babysitters for the kids tonight just to be on the show. So Jeff, welcome on the show. Nice to see you. And we'll have you start it off.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's Weffelmeyer in Missouri Task Force 1. I'm at St. Louis, Missouri, is the task force. And I appreciate you checking up on me and giving me the opportunity to come share a little bit with you all and have a good conversation.
Well, Walt, welcome, Jeff. Thank you. Walt?
Hey, guys. How you doing? So, yeah, as you mentioned, I just started off with Orlando International Airport Fire Rescue. Very excited after almost a 30-year career with Orlando Fire Department and a lot of blessings in my life. So I'm very fortunate. And just real quick, back to Andy and Davey, for what you guys have had to endure, especially these last couple of years. I'm very sorry for you. I wish I could do something directly to help you out. But if there's something we as the fire service can help support you, I appreciate you guys standing up for yourselves because if you don't, nobody else will.
Andy, that whenever they say that, that's when you ask them for money immediately. You're like, okay, here's the GoFundMe page.
We have a website. You can donate.
All right, we'll share the word. Okay, all right. Yeah, I'll take a look at it, man.
We'll see if we can get a link thrown up, and we appreciate the sentiment. And I had just gotten on the USAR team as a heavy rigger right before I was terminated. So some fellow USAR folks, good to see you.
And Jeff, you're on a USAR team as well, too, correct?
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm on a Missouri Task Force 1 out of Boone County, Missouri. Our FEMA team is represented from all over the state, from St. Louis to Kansas City, and we kind of all meet in the middle and train and deploy out of Boone County Fire District outside Columbia, Missouri. And then I'm in a special operations in St. Louis. We have 2 heavy rescue companies. And I got assigned there about 11 years ago. So fairly involved in rescue operations in USAR.
I've been working with the Trump administration, Department of Labor. Matter of fact, I have a presentation tomorrow, and they have a new OSHA symbol for crane symbols. Andy, you know what that is as a rigger?
Yeah.
Get the load off, my friend.
The little feet kicking, nice.
We'll start off with Walt. Walt, you wanted to talk a little bit about the Mayday survey, and then we could kind of go pass it to Jeff, Andy, and Davey. They all have a lot of experience. So let's just talk a little bit about RIT.
Yeah, for sure. So it's a great room to work to speak about the subject. And then if nothing else, a little Mayday for our brothers, So yeah, we'll look at the support on them. But on the fire ground, RIT's one of those duties that a lot of people look at. That's the crew that you don't want them to do anything, or they don't want to do anything. They're going to cast off to the side. And I think that's the wrong perspective. So our buddy Basil Ibrahim does a great job of putting it out front. If you like truck work, then you're going to like RIT. And it's softening the building, getting it prepared so you can minimize the chance of having that mayday. Maybe opening that door allows that member to get out on their own. And then mentioning that member, we got a few other folks that Collective Minds, sadly, when Don Abbott passed away, the study stopped. A lot of what we have built our understanding as to how valuable RIT is out there, even though it's recognized as about 10% of the time being the force that helps remove the firefighter from the dangerous atmosphere. It's certainly it's the last line of the opportunities. So it's the firefighter themselves that rescues about half the time, the crew around them, it's another crew around them, and then it gets down to the RIT company that gets that rescue in place. So it shouldn't devalue the idea of doing RIT. RIT should be, and as a commander, I was an 8-year district chief, 3-year assistant chief, now as a deputy chief, I highly value RIT. If our personnel aren't in the mindset, equipped and trained to go rescue our brothers and sisters, then we're failing ourselves. So we should certainly be aggressive on our fire ground so that we can attack the fire, overwhelm it, overpower it, or stop it to where we can find it, or at least rescue the people that can be saved, and then bring them out to safety. And then it's a matter of convenience. How far is this fire going to go? Try and prevent it from being an ICS exercise of we'd like to keep this to the city of origin and reduce it down to the building of origin if that's possible. But with RIT, we should look at it, I think, with a more aggressive posture, with a better supported option. I think there should be more available opportunities for the engine company, for their ambulance, for the rescue company, for the truck companies that are there, that should be a boldened force. So I'm very thankful the Orlando Fire Department took that approach many years ago when they put their heavy rescue back in service. My early days in the fire service, I was a 2-person medium-duty rescue company. We'd be heavy if we had 50 more pounds on us, but we were a 2-person company. And we did all that we could, but we went to all second alarms, had a lot of cool tools. And back then, we ran with almost what's a skeleton crew compared to our resources these days. And I'm very thankful we've upscaled, but it's because of forward-thinking individuals that have helped us get to where we are. And then recognizing the hazards for what they are. The buildings haven't gotten safer. So, and since we got more people on the grounds, we need more people available to rescue them.
2 things, and that was very well said, and I'll go to PJ and then we'll go to Jeff. We'll go right around the horn. One of the things that I talk about in my class at FDIC is I ask, raise your hand at how many people you have on RIT. And it's amazing that it's a lot of departments are still 2, 3 people. And I always try to find the chief I could pick on. And I have him stand up and I said, if you had a line of duty death in your department and the wife or husband of the firefighter came up to you and said, my husband or wife loved his shift or her shift so much that they only want those 2 firefighters to be pallbearers, what would you say? And they think for a second and they're like, well, I'd have to respectfully tell her that, 2 firefighters couldn't carry their husband with honor. They'd have to transverse stairs. I'm like, wait a second. So you have the courage to tell a widow that you can't carry a coffin with 2 firefighters, but you don't have the courage to pick up a radio and call for mutual aid or the foresight to plan like you did in East Haven to ensure that you have another company from another town coming as RIT. PJ?
Yeah, Frank, coming from a small department, that was always a challenge. RIT was always a challenge for us because we just didn't have the staffing. But what we did have was good mutual aid companies. But the problem there was the delay of them getting there. But the other benefit that we had was our volunteers. We have a ton of volunteers in our town, and a lot of them aren't interior certified. So they had this mentality that, well, I can be water supply and I can stand down here and I can do rehab. Like, well, wait a minute, there's a value for you. Just because you can't cross that threshold, there are a whole lot of things that I can teach you, train you, and have you ready to help soften that building. So when the mutual aid companies get here, if they have to go into action, the door is forced, the bars are taken off the windows, and the building is softened and ready to go. So I think it's when you truly look at what you have, you can make some accommodations if you're coming from a smaller perspective or smaller department.
And then in the end, you had another town coming in as RIT. too, correct?
We eventually transitioned to automatic mutual aid. So we went to automatic aid. So when East Haven goes to a fire, the neighboring town is automatically being dispatched at the same time. So they're not waiting for the incident commander to get there or to have those radio transmissions to say, hey, you're going to work, you're going to need more help. So that really decreases that response time for them.
So remember, if you're a command officer, if you don't have that automatic aid, there's no politician on scene that says that you can't call for the help that you need on scene. Just pick up the radio and you can get help there. Jeff, Walt was talking about having RIT that's proactive. The way I always looked at RIT was they could basically do anything that doesn't require them to breathe air, because once they're on air, you need them to be able to go in and affect that rescue. What's your take on using RIT for softening the building, laddering the building, all of those necessary things, conducting another size up? Go ahead.
Yeah, so our department, we've lived both. The first 9 years of my career, it was get the RIT bag from the chief's buggy, get a tick, get a medical bag, stand by the command post. Maybe the captain would do a 360 and size up the building. And other than that, you need to just be ready for get told to go. In the last several years, we have taken more of a proactive RIT approach, as you described, Chief. And that's what we're teaching now into the academy to the new members. And we're essentially using them, just like you said, as a outside truck company that needs to be prepared to go in and make a rescue. And where that stems from, St. Louis has only had RIT like on the books since a line of duty death in 2002, where we lost 2 members. And then from 2002 up until about 3 years ago, we've had one documented where the RIT team goes in and gets out the firefighter. And that's really changed everyone's opinion to where, we need to focus more, and I'm sure we'll get into it, on a training environment of training self-rescue and RIT to all members, because everybody's their own RIT team until they can't be. And then we're taking that approach. We're blessed. We also have a heavy rescue squad, 2 of them in St. Louis. They go on every reported fire in the city. We're not quite like, I took Abrams' class a couple months ago. It's really good. That's a good plug for his program and the numbers and the Mayday survey. But we're not like other cities where the rescue companies are dedicated to being the RIT team. Because quite honestly, as aggressive as we are and blessed to go to as many fires as we do, nobody would go to those companies and do all the technical rescue training if you knew at every fire you were going to go there and be the RIT team. But it's implied. Our rescues were founded, much like FDNY's in 2015, to rescue firefighters in trouble. And we train about half the time on rescuing firefighters and what we're going to do, knowing that the incident commander has the flexibility to use us as a utility player for anything on the fire ground. But if a firefighter's in trouble, at least 4 of the 6 members of the rescue companies are going to head to go assist that RIT team of 4, which we're a SOG driven organization. So our 5th engine or quint is always going to be the RIT team on a first alarm.
Okay, that changes all the time. I think that's a better model than just dedicating one company all the time for RIT, because they're just going to get stale. You want them in there operating. You would agree with that, right, PJ?
I would agree. But I also have a question I want to pose to Walt. So, I've been trained, and Connecticut Fire Academy is always trained. Frank, we did in our DVD series of harness conversion and converting the harness of the SCBA back. I've recently read some stuff and heard some firefighters who train in RIT and have some classes at FDIC that they're moving away from that task of converting the harness. Walt, do you have any information on that? And what do you do in your class?
So in one of the concerns, and it's not my class, but I'll share the information. So the concern is by disconnecting the SCBA buckle, then you're potentially taking that air pack and making it so that it'll disconnect. Or if you can't reconnect it, then the straps are so short, because everybody, when they want to ride it on their hips, they tighten it up. So you've got to be able to find that connection, or you've got to be able to find that buckle and loosen it and then run it through the legs. A quicker, easier application is a simple Prusik. where if you connect it to the backpack, run it through the legs and back up to the front, you create that same harness, that type 3 that you're looking to do, or at least a type 2, and then connecting into the air pack. And then depending on where you connect it as to how well it will stay on, and then you don't lose the integrity of where the air pack's sitting on the individual. And where that's also an advocacy is you'll be surprised how many people are not using their lowest straps. So, and some folks even take their lower straps off. So if you rely on that to be a tool for the victim, you may be failed. So if you go in with the plan of just something simple, and it's multiversal, right? So it's a simple Prusik double-ended, and it's got a trucker's hitch on it. So you can connect at one end, connect at the other end, and then you can just wrench it down and it self-bites. And then it acts like its own seatbelt, and it's always there for you. Now, another idea is also that strap that we have on the outside of the bag is an anchor strap, and just disconnecting that and using that so this way you got to load rate it if you got to do a weight rated lift and go a distance up or down stairs. So, but what we found is what's the best way to come up with these ideas is take your hungriest firefighters and tell them you can't go into the fire on a hose line or to do search, but you can do everything else to the building and to what you got to do to rescue firefighters. Go and let that table grow organically in that room and that process, and let them practice it out. And that's how a lot of these areas have developed over the years. And these ideas have really come to the forefront because what Rich Colomé and Bobby Hoff taught 20 years ago in RIT, right? 20, 30 years ago, have evolved, but they set a great foundation. And then now you got other forefront folks that are just constantly trying stuff out, seeing what works. And then you got busy systems that are sharing what they've got out there. So that's what I love about FDIC. You've got a platform to be able to connect with thousands and tens of thousands and Humpday Hangouts to connect with how many? So this way those ideas can get out in the world. And if we don't share them, it's kind of a loss,
Andy Pittman, I want to ask this question because my last fire in the city of New Haven was a Mayday situation. My radio couldn't get out. They sent the RIT team in to go get me. I was operating in the basement as a division chief. And the one thing that I would have needed if I was in trouble was air. And the RIT team came down with ropes and everything else. Nobody brought the RIT pack. It was outside on the RIT tarp. So one of the things that came out of that fire was that whoever is that fifth due engine assigned to RIT in the city would actually, the hydrant person would be assigned the RIT pack, the air, to bring the air. Does Seattle assign an individual to bring air to a down firefighter?
No, and it's changed quite a bit over the years. When I first got there, I was on ladder 6 where Steve Collins was, and on the deployment at that time, I was a rig company, not a RIT. So initially you would get a RIT company, and then as the balance of the alarm showed up, they sent an extra truck and they would marry up with the engine. So you had 8 people and they were assigned to the rig group. And so that's how it was when I first got in. And now it's changed, and there is nobody assigned as the bottle person. But at the current department I'm at, we just got the 30-minute Scott SCBA bottle for our RIT because we're a very small department and we wanted to minimize the profile of that bottle to get in there and make it a little easier to get in. And it's one of those things that, for me, when I look at RIT operations, I'm thinking we have the opportunity to be slightly removed from the immediate stress of the scene. So we get a little different perspective. So it's on us to make sure that that bottle is open. And as small as that seems, when I started doing RIT training earlier this year with a new deployment of Scots, they weren't turning the bottle on. So we have to be training real life in these RIT scenarios, training on the app bay to make sure that we're turning on the bottle. We've got to be increasing those neural pathways to be the most productive for our outcome in training. So that way, when we get to that high stress situation, we don't get down there and have a no-vis environment and be fumbling around for the valve for that bottle if we were fortunate enough to remember to bring it in. And another way that we've started to increase our neural pathways in RIT development is talking about building construction with our newest members in the same context. So a building collapse class doesn't take on building construction in the context of building collapse, but in hose stream management and how we do hose management moving into the building. And I learned that from Aaron Fields in the Nozzle Forward program, just starting to break things down in a very simplistic fashion on how we're moving through. And air packs are bringing in the RIT bottle. Definitely want to get that in there.
Now I can see after talking to you why Seattle wanted to fire you. What is going on? Jeff, in St. Louis, is somebody on that RIT team, even though it's a revolving company, is there a firefighter that's assigned to bring in the RIT pack?
Not like a riding position, so to speak, but it is part of the required tools from the RIT team, and that would be assigned by the company officer in charge of the RIT team. Generally, on our job, like anywhere else, or I suspect Seattle or any other big city jobs, that's going to fall to the junior member to carry the late weight. If I could go back on both subjects before since the last time I spoke, we have Scots, and our bailout kits are built into our SCBA. So every riding position has a bailout kit. It's in the belt. When we switched to the newest generation of SCBA, it's a lot better system than the original one, as far as having the bailout integrated, but it's also a Cobra buckle. And we found through training before we put them in service that that's next to impossible to unhook and get below the leg as far as conversions. So then we went, the rescues got together and we started drilling. And what we kind of found, our standard operating guidelines that I plan on talking about in the class, we made a similar conversion strap like Chief Lewis was talking about. We just bought cam, like ratchet straps, but the adjustable cam straps with the pull. And we bent off the hooks and we put non-locking carabiners in there, then had those straps sewn so the carabiners don't twist, they stay oriented. And same concept, you just clip in the front, go through the legs, clip anywhere else back on the pack. And then we drilled out golf balls, and on the adjustment side of the strap is a golf ball. So you just slide it with the glove hand. And we have had tremendous success doing that. And we did it on the cheap, right? Because we're our city's broke all the time, and we had, less than $500. It doesn't have to go out to bid type deal. And we were able to figure it out to get every RIT bag in the city outfitted just by doing the work in house. It's not rated like a pick-off strap, but for our purposes, it works. And what we actually teach now, if you're on plane, just tighten all the straps, and you can convert if you're doing anything with air. But if you're not doing air and you're just going to move and you're on the first floor and you're going the front door, as we're positioning that firefighter, we just wrench all the straps down as tight as we can and we go. And then we'll teach that conversion strap if you're going upgrade or below grade or in a big building. And it's in training, it's been highly successful for us. And then I'll echo what Andy did at his department, because I was involved with the unfortunate line of duty death in 2022. And we had big bulky RIT bags at the time. And I had the RIT bag and it made it about 3 feet in the front door and it sat right there. I'm like, I come back and get this if we need it now. We didn't need it. But along with that, our department, our administration was pretty proactive, and we changed all our RIT bags out to 30-minute cylinders, and we took all the, for lack of a better term, bullshit out of the bags, right? It's just the stuff to give air, and it's the conversion strap. We don't have cutters in there. We don't have drag straps. We don't have webbing. We've switched to pushing members to carry that stuff on their person just to limit and move fast. I hate to put everybody in one corner because I realize there's different incidents, there's different fires. Maybe you want our bottle on high rises. We have bolt on the rescue squads, but in warehouses. But for our bread and butter, where we're going to need to give air, is that fire you were talking about, Chief, where you're in the basement and we just got to run in, give you a bump of air and get you up and out. And we need to streamline our package, because when someone's missing, I've lived it, until you know where that person is and what the situation is, all you care about is finding your buddy and seeing what's going on. And then at that point, once you know what's going on and you're there, the cavalry's coming. More people than you need are going to show up once you get there and assess the situation. So if you want to increase the likelihood of having more tools and equipment with you when you get to that firefighter, I believe you need to streamline the package and go as quick as possible.
Jeff, I commend you for, trying something different. What works for you may not always work for everyone else, but you found a system that's going to work well for you. And I'd encourage you, if you haven't already, I know you submitted for FDIC, but I would make sure, if you haven't done it already, get an article on that. Get that over to the editor-in-chief, Chief Rhodes and Diane Rothschild, to have them take a look at that, because, it works for you, so it might work for someone else. Not saying it'll work for everyone, but it's definitely a good trick of the trade. Frank?
Oh, no. Talking. Davey, you want to weigh in on all this?
Sure. What that air does is it buys you time. I mean, it's the single biggest thing, is it buys you time. And like what a couple of guys just posted, that the cavalry's coming. So if you can buy somebody some time with that air pack, that's huge. I was on a truck company. And so we had, every truck company in Seattle had the rescue air kit, and it was a 1 hour bottle in the big, the polypropylene sled with the big bag, and people like to cram a lot of crap into it. I'm on the bigger side of folks. So for me, it wasn't a whole lot of extra weight compared to somebody who's, a lot smaller. But it also means that I tend to disagree with the idea of making the junior guy do it just because it's the junior guy. It needs to be the most appropriate person. We're talking about a rescue here. This isn't who's cleaning the toilets and who's taking out the trash. I care about, everybody can be fit, and there's different kinds of fit, but we have to be able to carry our equipment, and we also have to be able to carry the equipment to do the job. And sometimes that job is rescuing our peers, our buddies, our friends, people that we break bread with at the table. And I don't want to be slowed down, or I also don't want to be showing up with not enough. So I like what you guys are doing. And Jeff, I love that I don't give two poops that it's not rated, because we all know how strong those dang straps are. If you've ever used a cam buckle for tying down a motorcycle or tying down a load going to the dump, they're strong as heck, and it's more than enough. So good on you for coming up with that. That's fantastic.
I didn't come up with it. I actually learned it.
I just gave it to you.
Yeah. No, I tell everyone, when I teach, where I'm going to show you a way, not a way. You got to figure out what's best for you. And I tell everyone, St. Louis is the second oldest paid department in the country. None of us are making up anything new. We're just taking what we learned from, Frank and P.J., you guys don't know me, but I took your classes and FDICs over the years, and I take stuff I've learned and apply it to my city, my department, and I could just share my experiences and what works for us, and it's up to everyone else to take what they get out there and make it into their own package that works for them.
Sure.
So.
See, St. Louis is like the Midwest, where they're just so polite and nice. If it was New England or New York, they're like, "Oh yeah, I did that." Walt, when it comes to RIT and Mayday, the chief has a role in that. And some departments think that the chief, once you become a chief, that's where you stop learning and you get into your office. Can you speak a little to having the chief participate in the Mayday drills? When I became the drill master in New Haven, it was a big lift to get the deputies to come down and answer the Mayday calls. And for our listeners, no matter what Mayday acronym you use, the fact is the chief, your job is to get the information. And if they're not giving you the information, to ask questions to get what that location is, to kind of give some common direction. And what I found is after we made the deputies come down to participate in the drill, and I'd be like, you don't have to stay here all day. But you got to do one evolution, and you got to answer the call. You got to give hope, direction, fill in any blanks in the Mayday. And what I found is most chief officers, once they did one evolution, and I was like, okay, you can go. They're like, oh no, I want to stay and do the next one. They got some buy-in because it was a quality drill, and they saw the value in it and talking with the personnel. But too many departments still don't have the chiefs participating with the companies. And it's great that your firefighters know RIT and your lieutenants know RIT, but if the chiefs don't know RIT, you got a problem. Walt, can you weigh in on that?
So I was very fortunate to work with a lot of great folks in Orlando, a lot of like-minded individuals that owned being a chief and understood the responsibility that carries. So a lot of that, to me, the most important thing is that my chief is going to get me home by everything that they're going to be able to do. So if I trusted them and they asked me to go do something, I didn't argue with them. They told me to come out, I didn't argue with them. It's because I trusted them, and I earned that trust with them because they trained with us. And as I became a chief, I didn't want to let somebody down. I understood. I'd rather have to explain why I did something to benefit somebody than why I didn't. And that kind of caused a little bit of an uproar. But there's a lot of great people that work in Orlando, and they value their personnel. So the training is imperative. And to the chiefs that are skittish about doing that training, just keep in mind, man, proficiency and truth don't mind a challenge. So when you are good at your job, you don't mind getting the test of being in the seat and give me a Mayday. Now, where I was a little disappointed is I challenged a crew that I worked with early in my career. Hey, guys, run a fire, talk it over the radio, pick a YouTube, show me the video that you got, and run the fire. And it went sideways. And as it did, I went back over to the quarters and I said, guys, do me a favor. Next time you do this, take some stock in this because I'm trying to do this so I can be better for you on your day. Because realize the person that's going to die is you, not me. And I'm going to try and prevent that from happening. So if you want to take it as a joke, take it as a joke. But I want to try and take this serious because I value you guys. I love you guys. Now, you all suck at cooking, but I still love you guys. So,
P.J., I can't say that the brothers and sisters I worked with sucked at cooking. Being from a very Italian prominent community, we always ate well. And, Chief, what you're explaining, and I know a lot of the firefighters that you had the privilege to work with and command of, and it comes down to culture. And if you have that culture of training and culture that, I know your department had, I don't think it's a problem. I think if you have that culture, you don't have to convince a chief to come down to go to training. They know that that's my role. Regardless of how far I move up in the organization, that's still important. That's the culture that's established or changed. And if you don't have that culture, right, but you recognize that, regardless of what level you're at, make the difference. Everybody can step up and be a leader and start making that change. I always like to say, water boils from the bottom, sir. If you're in that department where the chiefs aren't getting involved, I want to go calling out the chiefs. But continue to learn, continue to educate and motivate, because someday you'll be a chief and you need to then set the example.
And if I could throw one more thing, as a company officer, maybe talking directly to the chief in a small environment, this way they save face, right? You don't want to embarrass anybody. That's not how they're going to learn. They're certainly not going to face it again. So just, hey, encourage them. Chief, I'd really appreciate if we were able to talk through this and let it build from there. That might be a solution,
Absolutely. Those quick, quiet conversations sometimes can go a long way and win people over. Jeff, you want to weigh in on having the chief participate in your RIT training?
We have a academy staff, but they're not staffed heavy. And so I'm finishing up. It's the last week of being assigned to headquarters for 4 months, teaching 40 new recruits that are getting ready to graduate Friday. And we culminate that in a drill. I think we stole it from New York with the MOAD, mother of all drills. And it's been done the last few classes. And we do fires all day, different parts of our tower. We bring track companies down. The recruits get assigned captains or company officers, victims, everything. Evacuate the building. So the first time they're on the fire ground, mock RIT deployments, and we bring in chiefs, or what we've been bringing in lately is guys on the chiefs list as soon as they work out some city workings that they're next up to be a chief, and they come and they run all the drills all day as command, and it's the closest we can get to putting the recruits in that type of situation without actually having at a real fire. We try and set the fireground pace. Most you can do in a concrete building, right? But it's been a game changer preparing our recruits to get ready and be probationary firefighters on, we call it the track, but the street. And as far as training in general, our chiefs, as they change out and get younger, it's getting a lot better. People are remembering where they came from. So much so, our fire chief a few years back, when we got the new bailout kits I was talking about, he was one of the first groups of people to do the bailout training, just to prove to everyone if the chief can do it. I mean, he's got almost 50 years on the job. He can retire any day, but he's out there, setting the hook, doing window hangs, doing bailouts. And you guys know as well as I do that a fire chief in the city of St. Louis is probably, unless he wants to, never going to wear an air pack or again if he didn't want to. But he trains, and that kind of set. We've had deputy chiefs come out when it's the 125-foot ladder top climb for the shift commanders will be the first person to climb up the aerial before the recruits and clip in. So fortunately, on our department, we got. I mean, like anywhere else, we have our issues, but we have a lot of decent and good leadership and a lot of people in line to take their place. So the future looks bright.
That's great to hear.
If I was home right now, I'd hold up Frank's book. Your chief probably read Command Presence, because that's part of that book. So
him and my mom. Andy, weigh in on the chiefs participating in training.
It's huge. From my perspective, we did some chief drills in Seattle, and Chief Thomas Richardson, the one from Seattle, not the one from New York, he would come out and drill with us. And, he put us in the gap in some of the tightest areas, and we trusted him from the inside to the outside that he had our back. And if we got to a Mayday situation, there was no question in our mind that it was all going to work out the best way possible. And we got in a few close ones. But he was out there bunked up with us, doing search drills, doing air pack drills. When we got a Proby, first day one, drill one was masking up. And Chief Richardson was out there in the App Bay drilling with us. And it really says a lot that Jeff says that their fire chief is out there drilling with them. Some of the guys that I worked with in Seattle that were chiefs were climbing the stairs with us in the morning before the Columbia stair climb. And that gives me a lot of confidence that the guy standing outside has familiarity with his equipment, even though he's riding the buggy, but also has the personal fitness to come in. And one thing that Walt said that really stuck out to me is having that pack with all the buckles on. Such a small thing that goes such a long way in a Mayday situation. And me as a new company officer where I volunteer, that's one of my requirements is we will always wear all of our straps tightened down. So that way somebody goes down, we can get it. And that's something that I learned from my chief at Seattle is like, we have to have expectations. We have to hold our members to it. So that way under stress, it's rapid fire. We don't have to wonder whether they're going to have all of their buckles tight.
I think that's awesome. And I always said, I want a chief on the fire ground working with their mind, not their hands. But in training, that's the time they can get dirty, build that camaraderie, and work with their crew. Davey, you want to weigh in? And then we're getting to the witching hour. We'll go around the horn and let anybody say anything they want on RIT. But you want to weigh in on the chief's training with the men and women?
I think it's absolutely critical because it sets you get the tone at the top. And if your chiefs are willing to go out, get sweaty, get dirty with you and do those jobs, it's inspiring to the newer people. It's the same thing if you've got a 30-year driver that's out there, the first one out there pulling the ropes off the truck to start doing drills. Lead by example. What kind of an example do you want to set? And as I believe, as a leader, you are first accountable to the people that you are tasked with leading before you are accountable to the people that you report to. And so as a leader, if you can go out there and chief level or even at company officer, if you're out there with your crew and the people that you're supervising and leading, you're showing them. That's fantastic. It's critical. Tom Richardson, quite possibly the finest example I can think of for that. Just like Andy, we have tremendous mutual admiration and experience with Tom. He's terrific.
That's terrific. That we need more chief officers like that. Walt Lewis, anything that you want to talk about, or if you want to plug your class, because I'm confident that you're going to be coming back to FDIC. The floor is yours.
I hope so. It's always an honor to be able to be there, but there are so many people, over 1,000 submissions. So, anytime I get to go, it's a privilege. I appreciate it. I do want to be able to share. So with Don Abbott passing away, sadly, the work stopped from his end, and we didn't want that to go without being better supported. So a group of us panned together and put together a website. It's firefightermaydaysurvey.com. And through that, we're collecting more data to build from there so that we can collect data, tabulate it, and show what is more data or more information that identifies what is successful out of a RIT team. Numbers, health conditions, sleep conditions, staffing, all types of stuff. So, big thanks to Basil Ibrahim, Ed Griffin, Dr. Lindsay Judah, Seth Major, Aaron Heller, and Jimmy Crawford, probably, one of the most well-known folks in RIT from the Bryceland Street Fire in Pittsburgh. So those folks helping put together Firefighter Mayday Survey. You see it there on the website or on our podcast. And if your department anytime has had a Mayday, submit the information. Certainly the sooner, closer to the Mayday, it's more raw. And it's always awkward for us to ask if you could submit that information. It always comes from a place of wanting to improve the fire service. It is not a condemnation. It is completely it's transparent, and it's also confidential. So all the information is available for anybody to share. It is not exclusive to us. We just wanted to create a platform for everybody to improve their version of the fire service and the fire service as a whole, so that hopefully we don't reinvent the wheel over and over again or relive tragedies. So we can see what's effective, make changes as we need to, and maybe even improve technology and connections so that we don't continue to go down the same bad path, whatever that path is. But
very well said. We're going to have Mark put the link to the GoFundMe page for the Seattle guys, the link for that, and any other links when this show airs on Wednesday. PJ, last words for the night about RIT?
Yeah, to keep it brief, but Frank, as you know, one thing I'm always passionate about when we talk about Mayday and RIT is don't forget about your dispatchers. Your dispatchers are in a very unique situation and have the ability to assist the incident commander if needed. You can go back to the Beacon Street fire in the city of Boston. The dispatcher there did an amazing job at communicating with those firefighters that were calling the Mayday. There's been plenty of instances of fire grounds across America where the incident commander has not heard the Mayday, but the dispatcher has and did not know his or her role, right? So we have to make sure that we're training with our dispatchers so, one, they understand their role and how to perform if the incident commander hears the Mayday, what their role is, and if the incident commander does not hear that Mayday, what their role is. So please, in all this training and all this education that we're doing, which is needed, don't forget about your dispatchers.
Very well said. Jeff?
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I probably don't need to say it to the people that watch this, being on the largest training platform the fire service has to offer. But take your training serious, especially the RIT training, the safety and survival training. Nobody ever thinks it could happen to them. No one ever thinks, oh, I'm going to be deployed on a RIT team. And then you're shopping at a grocery store in the middle of the afternoon, and the next thing you know it, you're pushing down a hallway trying to get to a trapped brother. And if you're not prepared and you don't take training seriously and you don't think it could happen at every fire, then you have the wrong mindset and you need to get more involved, or I guess take a look in the mirror and make sure you're doing the right thing. That you're in the right profession. And I mean profession by actions, not whether you get a paycheck or not.
Well said.
Well said. Love that. Andy Pittman.
Yeah, nice work there, guys. I think for me, the idea that I would be talking about a lawsuit in RIT in the same opportunity is as far from the fire service as I thought I would be, and that's kind of the same thing with a RIT or a Mayday. I was incident commander on one, and I thought I just killed two of my guys, and that's the worst feeling in the world. I would have rather jumped in there than had those two, and by God's good grace, I didn't. And at that moment, I couldn't train anymore. It was timer was up. And so same thing with the lawsuit. Like, I've had to learn so much more. And with RIT and politics, they're just not sexy until we see how it touches our home and how it touches our lives. So I encourage everybody listening, pay attention and dig in and learn something new. And for me, I've had to look around to the people next to me for inspiration, and being on here with you folks is definitely inspiring. It gets me all fired up, and I'm at home, so my wife's going to have to hear about it.
Davey?
I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and very similar to Andy. It's kind of odd to be talking about both a lawsuit and RIT, but they're both eminently important, because the RIT is how we help our brothers and sisters when we're doing the job, whether we're paid or not. And I have a huge regard for all of the volunteers that cover the vast majority of the square miles of this great nation. And our lawsuit is more than just about us being fired. It's about civil rights. And it's not just our religion. It's anybody. We're not limited to that. And so we're trying very hard to we're fighting for restitution. We're fighting for justice, but we're also fighting to protect this kind of thing from happening to anybody else at any time in the future. Thank you so very much for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's a pleasure to see you.
Very well said. That's it for Politics and Tactics. What a great show. Hope to see Jeff at FDIC, Walt at FDIC. Hopefully we'll get Andy Pittman. Definitely has a little bit of a fire instructor there. He needs to be putting in next year for FDIC, because I think Galliano's been keeping you under the hat or something. You're a Mad Hatter. I want to see a proposal from you next year. Jeff, I was very impressed with your proposal. It stood out amongst every RIT proposal. It was so heartening when I got a proposal and I was like, okay, good. This is a class I want to take. So, Walt, I know I'll see you in a bar, but maybe one day I'll step into your class too. That's it for Politics and Tactics. Everybody have a great night. Mark, take us off, and everybody be safe and realize that while the world may be a lot safer under President Trump, this is the time to double the guard and pay attention, because I think the next 3 months are really going to tell if we get hit with a terrorist attack in our country. And it doesn't matter how small department you work for. 4th of July is coming up, and every 4th of July celebration, every school in this country is a soft target. We need to be vigilant and be prepared as first responders. That's it for Politics and Tactics. Take us off.
If I could, one quick recognition. Today's the 4th anniversary of Surfside, for the 98 souls that were lost on that day, and then all the USAR responders that served and everybody affected. So God bless. Hopefully you don't repeat it again. And thank you, guys.
And President Trump, fund USAR.